Welcome back to the DTF Film Sessions. This is going to be session number 17. I'm Max Dean. You can find me at the Max Dean on Twitter. And today I am joined by Owen McCullor. He is at Weekly Huddle on Twitter, and he is a contributor here for us at Defiant Takes Football, doing draft content. Worked with him before. He's done a lot of stuff with us in the past. And today we are going to be breaking down Nolan Smith, the edge defender for Georgia. How you doing today, Owen?
I'm doing good. I'm really excited to talk about some of these guys. I've been keeping up with Nolan Smith for a while now. I was kind of on that earlier hype train, had him done in the summer, leading up to the season, and then once he got a couple of the early games out of the way and then got hurt, I was able to do like a full write up and he was one of the first guys I've gotten done in the whole process just because I knew I wasn't getting any more new game film. So I've delved deep into him and have seen the rise and fall of him, and then rise again as a prospect. So it's really interesting to see what kind of player he is and how different things have changed people's perspectives on him as a player.
For sure. So, most of the people who have been watching these will have at least some idea that I just don't watch college much during the season, and I come to all of this later. And basically during the actual draft process itself is when I start to look at these guys. And so, I don't really have the background of Nolan Smith as the first overall, what am I looking for? Recruit, right? Number one rated recruit in his class. So I'm aware of those things, but it wasn't really like something that I had a lot of, prior coloration in my view of him. So I've come at him pretty raw in terms of what I know about him. So he's a smaller guy. He's only 6'2". It's about 238 in terms of his combine measurables. So, he's got bulk for the height. It's not that bad, but he's not the tallest of players. So, you just look at that and I think outright, if you're just measurable scouting, you're probably like, okay, if this is an edge guy, then he's probably an outside linebacker type. You know what I mean? He's probably going to be running out of a 2-point stance for the most part. And he's probably going to be a weaker player in the run game, right? Like, you're not necessarily thinking that this is what his strength is going to be. But I felt like after turning it on and actually watching it, he's quite good in the run game. And honestly, there's probably more tape of him being good in the run game than there is of him outright pass rushing. At least in the games that I watched, they dropped him into coverage quite a bit on pass rushing snaps. And I think that's probably just due to the depth of the Georgia defensive line. And also just the fact that he didn't play as many snaps. That's probably similar reasoning for that. So I just thought he was kind of interesting. I didn't expect to see him as good against the run as I did. So what were some of your basic thoughts on Smith before we jump into the tape itself?
Yeah, I had him done late into the 2021 season before he announced his return to college. So I had watched them and had him at a second round grade kind of thing there. And when I got to the games, and I'm glad you included one of the games you did because it was one of the ones that really was a eye opener for me when it came to run defending, was that I was really surprised how, even though he's kind of a smaller guy, he is more filled out. And even though it doesn't show up as much in the pass rush, he does play with some good play strength, and he doesn't fear getting blocked up like some of these smaller guys, which would avoid contact. And he'll have issues with taking on blockers and things like that. They'll look to try to just out athletic these offensive linemen who they think they're more agile than, have better change of direction than, and they'll sometimes play themselves out of a run gap. Whereas he, or Nolan Smith, will take on pullers. He is willing to use his body and his frame to the most it can be and still stand guys up and play in the run game. So I always thought that he was a bit better when it came to using his strength when it came to run defending than most people give him credit for, which I was higher on him early on in the season because I saw that and I was like, okay, he's out for the rest of the year. We're not going to get a lot more reps where it's going to present that when he's the pass rusher. But we know he's a good athlete and he's able to play bigger than he actually is listed at. And then people started to come around more when it came to the combine because they saw how good of an athlete he was. And they go back and retroactively see like, okay, yeah, he's got that burst. He's got that speed off the edge. They did use him a lot in coverage snaps. So I think that'll make up because he is going to be a smaller guy. He's going to be probably relegated more to maybe if you want to play him at weak side end in the 4-3, I wouldn't advise it. But I mean, that was something they talked about him playing as, and he did play with his hand in the dirt a little bit at Georgia. But they did use him a lot when it came to like quarterback spies and dropping the coverage because he has that range. He is he's a fast guy. He had ridiculous numbers at the combine, especially in the 40, and that shows up in some of his tape. So maybe he won't be the most powerful guy in pass rush, but he isn't afraid to take on run defenders. He's a pretty sound run defender overall and uses his power there more than anything. And he has that athleticism that even though he didn't have the most expansive pass rushing kit or toolkit when he came to the college game, he was able to still beat guys by beating them upfield, bending, and he was smart enough with his hands to be able to avoid getting deleted by some of these tackles who had more length on him or who are just overall bigger that can absorb some of the things he does.
Yeah, I think if you are going to play him at, true defensive end in a 4-3, it really at least needs to be a scheme where you're running a lot of really wide sets, like where you got guys coming out of 9-tech a lot. I don't think that you want to have him close to the tackle. Like, I don't think you want him being like 7 too often or 5 much for sure. And honestly, 2-point stances are probably going to be better for him, especially where you're going to be able to utilize some of his movement skills in space. And we'll see. I feel like the pass rush is a little bit more of a projection for me personally, but with the traits, I know there are going to be people who fall in love with that. So let's jump into it and take a look at what we have here, and you can just reflect on that. So I'm going to let the first play run through here, and we'll just go back and forth off of it.
All right, that's good.
So the other thing that I want to point out about him is that he is a high effort, high motor player, which I love. So right off the bat, for his frame, he's taking on a pulling guard here, and he just stonewalls him. Like, his ability to turn his explosiveness into power was very impressive overall. But on this particular play, right, this is an SEC pulling guard, and maybe he's not the best guard ever. I'm not really sure. But the fact that he's able to step up to the line of scrimmage, lower his shoulder pads, take on all of that contact, stop him dead in his tracks, completely shut that gap, and then peel off. And even though he doesn't make the tackle, he affects the tackle. I thought this was, he doesn't necessarily like seal the edge, but still, like, in terms of what his job was, I thought this was very impressive.
Yeah, when you coach up defensive ends and stuff like that to defend the run against pullers specifically, you want to do one of two things. One of which is either going to be wrong arming on that upfield shoulder to make sure they don't bounce underneath you, because a lot of these plays, the running back's job is to follow that pulling tackle through the gap, or in this case, it was the sniffer tight end. So he takes on his guard, and he really kind of closes the gap that they're trying to run through, forcing the running back to the outside. So if you're not going to wrong arm it and take away that gap yourself, if you plug it with the pulling guard, it's the same effectiveness. So he was able to take that on. And even though he took him on with his shoulder, not really his hands, and I kind of expected that because, like we were saying, he's not the most powerful guy, but he is high effort. He's willing to turn his speed into power and just get his shoulder into that guy's chest. He can stonewall him and then prevent that guy from getting any more space and blocking him backwards into, say, some of the more wrong angles from this corner and the safety that are playing up on him. So he takes on the puller, which is a guy who's going to be much bigger. We talked about how he's probably going to be an outside linebacker kind of guy, maybe even a weak side D end. He's not going to be one of those defensive linemen who can reduce down inside and rush from the interior, just because he's not going to be able to potentially physically handle these bigger guys. But we see one of those bigger guys on the move here, and he just takes him on and prevents him from getting out there and doing more damage, as well as affecting the designed run play, forcing a bounce out to where he has more help. And he does his job overall, because they're trying to add numbers there into that single gap, and plugging that gap prevents them from being able to have the numbers advantage, forcing the running back to take it outside and get into a place where he knows he has help from the back safety there.
Yeah, and I think he's an intelligent player. I don't think there's any question that he's anticipating this play, right? They try to do some stuff with movement pre-snap. They've got the back shifting sides. They've got tight end coming across. They've got the guard pulling, and it's just really no question. He knows his assignment, executes. And this was right at the beginning of the game, and I was like, okay, set the tone nicely. Like, I like this a lot. All right. Let's see what we have next here. I mean, and that's going to be something that coaches love to see too.
Oh yeah, he was always, especially at that tail end of that 2021 season, we were hearing a lot about how he was a high character captain of that defense kind of guy, and that his return was going to be big for a Georgia team looking to repeat. So that defense knows and identified that this guy is going to be one of their leaders and was super high character. So that's another thing that coaches are really going to get excited for, to pair along with his athletic profile.
All right, next play. Yeah. Okay. So another really just savvy play, right? You know, and really honestly, it's just execution of assignment, right? It's just a read option. And an athletic play in space.
Yeah, if anyone who's played Madden with how they finally added in, like when they finally added in read option plays and things like that, you know that there is that one specific player that you're keying, and then if they do one thing or the other, you give the ball to the guy, and it really puts that defender. The whole point of this play is to put Nolan Smith specifically into that position where he can't be right. If he comes down and squeezes down on the running back, the quarterback's going to pull it and try to get the outside where he loses contain, or if he stays pat and wants to keep contain on the quarterback, the running back can take it and get off that kind of a C gap looking area where he can just bounce it up in the middle of the field and get some good yardage. What is so impressive about this is that he doesn't break contain. He understands, like, okay, I'm unblocked. Something's happening. They didn't just forget me. So he understands something's going to be happening, identifies that it's a read option, has eyes on the mesh, and knows that he's confident in his athletic abilities too. He's going to squeeze down, and if the quarterback pulls, I'm able to explode and get lateral down this line of scrimmage and make the play on the quarterback. So even though they tried it to where they wanted me to suck inside and then try to get around on me, because the quarterback, Spencer Rattler, is an athletic quarterback. He's not a statue or anything. So they were probably banking on the fact that they could probably get this guy out of position and use their athletic quarterback to get around him. However, he is a super athlete. He was the one recruit. He showed out the combine. And this is really just a playing example of it, where you can take those combine measurables and be like, okay, this enhances what we saw on tape and really just confirms it. He's able to come down on the line of scrimmage, take away and force the pull, and then be able to read and react and come down the line of scrimmage and make an athletic play that most defensive ends wouldn't be able to do, which is why this play is usually effective. However, he's able to do his assignment and be athletic enough to cover both options, basically.
Yeah, so you mentioned that he squeezes down. I love that he closes the space here, right? So he's not just like, okay, what do I do? What do I do? He's like, I'm going to close space, mostly laterally. So if it is going to the running back, I can, basically blow that up behind the line of scrimmage. But then look at this change of direction. So the quarterback is already moving in that direction. Boom. Like that's really, really special. And then he doesn't just go for the big hit. He wraps up. Like there's just everything about this play is right. All right.
Yeah, if you're going to be a coach that's teaching defensive ends how to play a read option play, you're going to show them that film, and that's the example you want to set for everybody.
Next up, he's coming out of 2-point stance. Okay, so this is really just showing off his effort and his straight line speed, because he's in coverage here and he doesn't necessarily really impact this early on, right? Like he doesn't block the throwing lane or anything like that. But once the ball goes to the receiver, he doesn't just turn and watch things happen down the field, right? Like he goes, he makes sure, drives the player out of bounds. He gets in on it. He makes sure that he impacts it in some way, even if he can't impact it on the front end. As a second reaction player, he makes sure he's there. So I just wanted to show this one just really because of effort.
Yeah, so in this play, he's going to be the spine, the quarterback. I've watched this game a couple different times to watch some of the players on both sides of the ball. And he's here set up as a traditional edge rusher. Then he pulls up to be that quarterback spot because Rattler was able to escape the pocket a lot and really do damage when he was on the rollout and things like that. So they started playing more conservative, and they know that Smith is a good enough athlete to track him down if it happens to that. So he drops to his quarterback spy area, takes away a short throwing lane, but it's not really his biggest task. He's not like a zone hook coverage receiver or coverage player here. So once he knows the ball is gone out of Rattler's hands, he's able to flip his hips and find where the ball went. And this just puts to, like, people usually look at the comment like, okay, he ran fast, but does it show up on tape? Like, it's A lot of people like to look at the numbers and be like, oh, he ran a fast number. Like, does that really, he ran it in pajamas. Is it going to do anything for him when he plays on the field? This just shows that they relied on him to be that kind of guy, to be that defender who watches these as athletic quarterbacks. And once he identifies the ball is gone, he's able to get down laterally and track down a wide receiver who's running across the field and still make a play. Whereas if you think of like a D end, if you ask like Will Anderson in this draft class, who's more of that 260 heavier kind of set to get down lineman to get lateral and catch a crossing wide receiver after being a quarterback spy, he might struggle to get over to the sideline and make that tackle before someone else does. Whereas Nolan Smith, it just really shows that like the thing he showed at the combine in his testing shows up on his film, and he's able to be asked to do several different roles, whether it's dropping in coverage, being that spy defender. And that's going to be important for the NFL, where it's moving more towards these mobile quarterbacks, where you need to have a guy who, even though he's not rushing the passer, can still keep an eye on him. And if he escapes the pocket, put pressure on him there. And then also impact the play down the field with his speed and high effort, like you were mentioning.
All right. Next up. Okay, so another run play. So the thing is, I wish that I had seen more pass rushing snaps, but it just seemed like every time there was a pass rushing play, it was either ball out quick because they didn't want the Georgia D-line to just destroy their offensive line, or he's dropping into coverage. And so there was a little bit that I liked, but it just wasn't as readily available in the games that I watched. But again, this shows what he can do in the run game. So this is using quickness as opposed to power to like stand up a guard. He just gets around the tight end really, really effectively and just makes a big play in the backfield. And you can see a little bit better in the other angle. So I'll let you talk about it for a second as we roll to that.
Yeah, so this play, I was trying to like, when I picked out the plays we were going to be going over, I was trying to find areas where I thought that it would highlight different aspects of his game. So this game, they really haven't having any like true pass rushing sets. And that's the thing with Georgia D-line, is that they have a lot of great interior defenders and they want to get them used a lot in pass rush. So they'll have their D ends either drop into coverage if they're like a Nolan Smith type, or like last year with Trayvon Walker, they'll have him as a crashing player from the outside to the in to allow their D lineman to loop around. So a lot of Georgia players won't get these traditional one-on-one pass rush snaps. So you've got to look at some of the things and be like, okay, what can we take away from these other reps where that could, be like this rep here and to show like, okay, he has that first step explosiveness. And on this play, they're trying to just down block him and get him out of the way because they're having that play side guard and the backside guard both pulled to be lead blockers. Typically, a defensive lineman who isn't fast enough to get out of the stance will just get down blocked out of there, and they just need to hold the block for half a second and allow the running back to get to remove the angle that they can take from there, because you see how there's a giant vacated gap now between the tackle who went up to the I'm sorry, that was a tackle that pulled. But you see what I mean? There's a giant gap between
the center.
The guard
it's the center and the tackle that are coming off.
I had the ball.
But yes, I see exactly what you mean. It's just a first step explosion to get away from the tight end here, and the power to just run through him through the arms like they're nothing. Right. And then again, it's just, there's a lot of instinct here. There's a lot of really good, and he's not, he's not throwing a long arm on the tight end. Like, he's not really using any power technique here. It's all about explosiveness, but he also has the strength to run through any contact once he's used that initial burst. And then he just gets to the backfield, squares up, arms out, tackle. Like, you can't teach it any better than this, especially for a player with his specific skill set. Like, he plays within himself really, really nicely.
As an offensive coordinator, when you call this play, you're factoring in that this guy, this place at the end, is not going to make the play because he needs to be blocked for all of 1 second to be able to get the running back outside of it. And the fact that he's able to get out of the stance, beat the blocker to the spot, and then still take advantage of that gap, which you never really factor into when designing these plays and calling these plays up, is what's really special about him, especially when it comes to run defense.
All right, so into the Oregon game, I believe this is a true pass rush snap, I think. Yeah. All right. And there were a couple of plays similar to this. And that's the ideal way for him to beat you, is to the outside, because he has that burst. and he's pretty wide, and he just straight beats the tackle to the spot here. Like it's pretty clean. I mean, and you'll be able to see it again better on the other angle. But he puts hands right here. He shoots him really, really nicely, slaps him out of the way, and it's just a done deal.
Yeah, I think
this is
what
this is what you expect it to look like from him on his pass rush wins.
Yeah, as a pass rusher, I don't think he has the most refined tool set when it comes to like different moves and counters and things like that. But where he is able to win is with that burst off the field. And you see here, it's more of like a swipe as opposed to anything else. It's not really a dip and rip kind of move. But that's all you really need to do, because he's relying on that punch to beat him, he's already off balance here, and you can get around up top. And the quarterback's taking this from a shotgun set, so he's already about 4 or 5 yards behind. So if you're Smith here, your goal is to get to that 5-yard line before the tackle can get there moving backwards. And as someone who has the explosiveness he's able to beat that tackle to that spot. And when the tackle tries to get hands on to try to prevent him from beating him there or just slow him down a little bit, he has his hands. He's not too focused on what he's trying to do, where he is with his feet or his hips. His upper body and lower body are disconnected to the point where he can still, it's kind of natural when it comes to bending around the edge and getting upfield, whereas his hands are now able to be free and be used to counteract some of the things the tackle is going to do. And he just out athletics this tackle. And even though the tackles do get more athletic when it comes to the NFL level, very few of them are going to be that athletic enough to keep up with him. So this is kind of indicative of what he will be able to succeed at doing in the NFL. Some of the quarterbacks in the NFL will be able to get the ball away, which is what they did a lot in college, was just try to get some quick dropbacks and set to get the ball out before the speed rusher can get to them, because they have to take that longer angle outwards. And like you said, he's not really that guy who can reduce down and really reduce the rush angle with power. So he has to really win outside. So that might be something he has to learn to deal with early on in his career, which is we're adding more counters to the inside and things like that to keep a tackle guessing and keep a quarterback guessing as to how long he has in the pocket is going to help him. But this just shows how out the gate, when he first gets there, he's going to have that speed rush down pat, maybe even be able to add on to it with some better hand movements. But as of right now, he has a good foundation of what he can rush at you with when it comes to rushing from an outside alignment here, like a wide 9, or even as a 3-4 outside rushing linebacker.
So, there are a few things that he can clean up, right? So like right here, he takes a false step, and his explosion's so good that he kind of is fine with it. But like, I'd love to see him not waste that time, because then that even it furthers his advantage in terms of explosion. But when he does get here, aside from just the athleticism, the timing of the swipe is really nice. The placement of the hands is really nice. And again, that's why I think that him being wide set is going to be such a big deal, because he'll be able to threaten you so badly outside that he'll be able to work on those inside counters. He'll force you to overset outside sometimes, and then he'll be able to come in. And so if you can get him with a good defensive line coach, like especially like anyone from the 49ers tree, I think would be perfect for him. I'd really love to see that, but you just see the pathway. So I can't make him my edge 2. I think, even though there's so much good here, I would like to. I mean, it's tempting, but I just don't think I can based on size alone. So right now, I think I've got him at 3, but I just need to watch a few more guys to solidify that. So for sure, I've got Will Anderson as my number 1, and then I've got Tyree Wilson at number 2. But as of right now, Nolan Smith would be 3 based off of anybody that I've really had a good opportunity to take a look at. So where does he rank for you based on your edge group?
Yeah, this edge class is a little different than how it is in the past. It's so good, and that there's those 2 top guys. So I have Anderson and Wilson at number 1 and number 2. And then from like 3 to really like 8, it's really close when it comes to grades, because some of these guys do some things differently. Some are more developed and have less of an upside, but are really good from where they're developed. There's just a lot of really good talents at different stages and different ways of the game. So right now I have him as currently edge 7, But if he with some guys, you can argue our edge 3, and I'd be like, yeah, I can see that, and I can be totally there with you. Where I am a little drawn back on is just like you said, he needs to find that right system where they're going to be able to use him in like a wide 9 technique or as an outside linebacker, where he's not going to be super scheme versatile. So as like a traditional 4-3 defense, you probably won't have any use for him. Someone like maybe a Wink Martindale defense, and the Giants could use someone like that. There's going to be some positional stiffness when it comes to versatility and scheme. I also think he's a little underdeveloped as a pass rusher itself. Like we said, with his pass rush moves, he does win with good speed and has that hand fighting when it comes to fighting guys pass rush blockers off, like how we saw in that Oregon clip where the tackle tries to get hands on, he's able to swipe him away, and it doesn't impact his speed rush as much. But I didn't see any true, and it's probably a lack of Georgia having to do true pass rush sets, which is why guys like Trayvon Walker in the past have had these kind of concerns where they haven't have this like expansive toolbox to work with just because they don't have the experience, and the emphasis hasn't been put on them learning how to beat a tackle one-on-one with different ways. So I think he has some room to grow, which is good, especially with somebody with the athletic build he has. I just think that the position versatility is a little bit lacking, and even though he's good as a run defender right now, I think as a pass rusher, I wouldn't expect him to put up huge sack numbers right away. I would say probably 2 to 3 years on the line, he might be able to get up to like that double-digit sack number once he's able to start understanding what his role is in a defense and getting a coach to get to work with him more on how to use his hands to go counter inside, and even adding a little bit more power on that frame when it comes to like muscle and things like that. Because when you get to these NFL strength and conditioning coaches, they always find ways to pack more weight onto guys. And he's already such a good athlete right now that even if he loses a little bit of his explosiveness and his speed, he still has plenty to give. So sacrificing a little bit of that to add more power to his game, to add more dimensions, especially as a pass rusher, would really go well into rounding him out. So I think I'm not going to say one-dimensional, because we have exhibited that he has the power, especially against the run game. But as a pass rusher, I think he's pretty underdeveloped. But there's the talent and keys there that make you want to be like, okay, I can take this guy in the first round if I'm confident enough. I have a system and a specific spot I already have picked out for a guy like this to really develop and maximize what I think I can get out of him. So I think high second, late first is where I personally have him graded. It's just such a stacked defensive line class, and there's some guys I like better just because they're more prototypical sized with those athletic traits, that he's at 7 with me. But like I said, you could make the argument that he could be anywhere from 7 to 3 personally.
I think that, when it comes to these rankings, there's really more about tiers than anything, because within those tiers, wherever you have a guy pegged, probably just dependent on how well you think he fits into your personal scheme, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that value for him would be higher with a team that goes up against a very athletic quarterback on a regular basis, right? So I think a guy like this, if the Steelers don't anticipate keeping Highsmith for a long time, if they have to go up against Lamar Jackson twice every single year, and they foresee having to get through him to the playoffs, then that might be a player that is more valuable to them. Or perhaps a team like the Jets, where they use the wide 9 sets often for their D ends, but also they play against Josh Allen, so they need a guy who can chase down mobile quarterbacks, who can spy them, who can be effective in the run game and rush the passer. So I think there are teams where the fit is better than others. So I see what you're saying 100%. But I just like the package. I like the athleticism. Mm-hmm. I like the effort. I like that he's good in the run game. So like where you figure would be the hardest to coach up is kind of already there, And so if you feel like you can expand on the pass rush, then that's great. So I've already gone kind of long on this. So we are going to call it a day for Nolan Smith, but we are going to be back very shortly with BJ Ojulari from LSU. All right, Owen, appreciate you. You can find him at Weekly Huddle on Twitter. He also runs the Weekly Huddle YouTube channel. You can find me at the Max Dean. You can find Defiant Takes Football at Defiant Takes on all social media outlets. Of course, we're live here every Monday and Thursday, and all of our written content is published at defianttakesfootball.com. We'll see you all very soon. We're getting close to the draft, baby. I'm excited.
It's that favorite time of the year.